known as one of the early achievers in this field, but also because in the end of the 20s, she hired a young man named Billy Baldwin. Has any of you heard of Billy Baldwin? Okay, Billy Baldwin was really the first superstar decorator, first male superstar. There were a couple of them, and there have been more since. But he was a brilliant designer, and her chief claim to fame now is that she knew enough to hire him. She died the same year as Elsie de Wolfe did, as it happened. And this is the kind of interior that she did. And this was, well, published partly because color photographs are available. So it's traditional with a lighter look than would have been used prior to that. I would never expect you to be able to identify one of these rooms with, relate them to one of these people. Even though including, I wrote a book about design and, New York interior designers from actually 1935 to 85. And doing research for that and looking at their work, I picked out what I wanted to illustrate in the book, but I couldn't have looked at it and said, this looks like Elsie. It didn't get until much later that you would find a designer with perhaps a particular look, and it's not until recent years that designers have enough options in variety of furnishings and style to actually have one of their own look, because at this point, and this is it's hard for you to understand because we're living now. When you did it, this was the style you used. Not in the sense that, at Louis XVI's time, there was only one style. In this era and well into this century, if you had money and you hired a designer to do your house, a decorator to do your house, it was going to be 18th century English and French. If you were an avid collector and a fan of, and you knew you were a collector of colonial furniture, which happened later, then you did that, but what's the difference between, visualize an interior with American colonial furniture and picture an interior with 18th century French? What's the first, biggest, most obvious difference? See, there's one to me, okay? The French one looks expensive. It's going to, if you do it authentically, it's going to be more pretentious. So if you want people to know you have a lot of money, this is still going to be the case when you're out. If you're out doing residential interiors, there are still people who are going to think, it has to be fancy French formal, not meaning that that's not good, but that says money. French antiques, or English antiques, or Russian antiques. Modern furniture, until very recently, not only was decorating in a modern style not popular, widely popular in this country. In the sense, everybody in New York appreciated it, and California appreciated it. The whole middle sector didn't understand it. Modern furniture wasn't widely available until the middle of the 20th century in this country. Even where it was first developed in Europe, at the Bauhaus, that wasn't widely available. Scandinavians weren't designing in very well. Nobody knew what Scandinavian furniture was outside of the Scandinavian countries. So not only were the materials not there, we were still looking back to Europe as the source of good design. Even now, we're looking every time you open up the fashion pages, every time there are shows in Paris and Milan, and there's big coverage of that. There's coverage of the international markets, but we're brought up in America to think everything in Europe is better. I still think, I won't buy shoes made in America. And that's not just I don't know if that's my crazy, but I think, leather goods have to be made in Italy, or maybe France if you can't get them from Italy. There are all sorts of things, cashmere's, you don't have to go through my biases. But these are things, it's not just mine, this is sort of an American point of view. Imported cars, for a long, long time, were, much classier. And now, I don't know, are they still?
Sure.
Well, wait a minute, the Jaguar, the Rolls, I mean, those still all the most upscale. So anyway, this goes along with that, which is why it's hard to come to modern. Now, modern art can get a lot of money, and there are people who understand if you're a modern art collector, you have modern furniture, and there is now art design furniture, which is collectible. So it's now acceptable socially, and I'm not meaning some of these people sincerely prefer this, but there are clients, I'm told, who want you to do their home so that you show off. And this whole clientele was not people who said, gee, I'm too busy, both of us work, help me furnish the home. These were people whose home was supposed to reflect their level of taste and their level of sophistication and their money. So they all tend to look alike. And you will see that. This is one thing now, the slipper chair that I'll show you later, which is what this is called. It's not usually fringed, it's usually skirted. This is something that Billy Baldwin popularized. Can't say he invented it, it's just taking the arms off chairs. But he made it very popular. And here, the lighter, less clutter use in an interior. And another one, in this residence, supposedly, I haven't seen it, I've been told, she designed or had the windows sink into the floor so that instead of double open doors, it would go down so that you could go directly out to the landscape, to the garden, which fronted on the water. And this is just a picture of her with Billy Baldwin, who I'll talk about later. Most of the early designers, not actually Ruby Rose Wood, I think had Elsie did most of the designers. Most of the big names had a shop. Why did they have a shop? Well, I told you about wanting traditional things. I hire you to decorate my house. Where do you find the furniture? There's no D&D building. That was D&D, I looked these up. D&D building was in the late 60s. That's when Design Center started. There were a few showrooms before that. There were showrooms in the 50s. You go to Europe. Sometimes you might take me with you. You know, you go to Europe and you shop for me and you bring back stuff. And a student this afternoon said, what if I don't like it? I don't think that happened very much. You bring it back and you say, this is perfect for your living room. What do I know? You're the decorator. And I'm busy going to society parties. But I don't, most people, we're talking about what the decorator's job is to do the house in whatever is appropriate for whatever their lifestyle is. If I had very strong feelings about it, I imagine I'd go to Europe with you and we'd shop around. As, many designers who buy things abroad do with wealthy clients today. But the other thing is, so you buy this stuff and you bring it over. Maybe you go shopping not just for me. You go shopping in Europe and you find stuff and you bring it back. You open a shop. And you furnish my place from the shop and your place from the shop, and various other people might come in and buy one or two things. But that's what your source is. And the first couple of designers who opened shops, somebody named Elsie Cobb Wilson, went to Parsons. Her former instructor was running a school in Paris, and I'll tell you about Parsons in a bit. And he was running a branch of the school. He said, I'll be your agent in Paris, and I'll ship things over to you. And he and she fell on the outs, and he said to another student, well, now I'll be your agent in Paris, and I'll ship over to you. So instead of going over as often, he's there in Paris. Plus, he was your instructor at school. He knows more than you do. So you have a really good agent and a network of setting up a decorating business. There are designers now there are a couple who have shops. There are a couple who are opening shops. Many of them who buy, whether it's abroad or from local sources or from various furniture manufacturers, many of them have warehouses because now you can say, I'm telling you about the business now while we're at it, now you can say, I don't like that sofa, take it back. So what am I going to do? I won't take it back, you ordered it. That means you're not going to pay me for the rest of the job. So I take it back. The manufacturer won't take it back because it's a custom item or it's custom upholstered. Mm-hmm. So I put it in my warehouse. If I'm lucky, You hire me and it goes in your house. If I'm not lucky, I sit on it, and those are some of the things that come up at Sotheby's and Christie's. They have things, Christie's calls them the house sale, which is not fabulous antiques, just sort of assorted but good quality things. You get great bargains there. Incidentally, you ought to know about those. They will be things like a perfectly nice unused sofa that obviously a designer ordered and, you know, the client didn't want. But anyway, these people had shops. And to get to it, Rose Cumming was the shop to end all shops, apparently. It was around still in my lifetime, but I never knew about it or didn't go in there. She had a shop on 57th Street. I think somewhere, it would have had to be between Madison and 3rd Avenue on those couple of blocks. And people like Mario Bawada and Tom Britt, I know for sure, because I've seen their names associated with it, and others would drop in, and she had very quirky taste. She was untrained as a decorator, as anything. She wore big hats and dressed very eccentrically, and they would go in and find this fabulous weird chandelier that was just the perfect accent piece for the dining room, or an odd piece of furniture. She dealt in really accent pieces that she found in Europe.
What was the name of the shop?
Oh, I assume it was her name, Rose Cumming, or Rose Cumming Inc. Yeah, because when she died, her sister took it over. And then someone bought out the rights to the textiles, and there is somewhere in the D&D building, I believe, still a line of Rose Cumming fabrics somewhere. But this is her own townhouse, and what you see here is there's no particular style. Everything doesn't go together. There are sort of odd pieces mixed up, and it's sort of a very personal kind of clutter. And I put in the image of, I had narrowed down because there are fabulous images, but there are only so many I can show you in a lecture. Her mother's bedroom was similar, but it was draped in and the walls were purple, which is obviously her mother's favorite color. And these are some of the fabrics, very lovely textiles. And I believe she had them woven abroad. As I said, what remains is somewhere in the Rose Cumming textile collection. Siri Maughan is known because of the name she bears. She was the writer Somerset Maughan's divorced wife, his first wife. She had a decorating business in England, came over and worked in America a bit, and became very famous. Well, this room is illustrated in practically every design history book I've looked at. And this was the famous white drawing room because, first of all, it was more modern looking than most things of the time. It was very much in keeping with the coming of Art Deco to America. But in America, it was called the modern. In France, it didn't get called Art Deco until 1968. There was an exposition. And there was a